Good evening, everybody. It's another Monday, but it's not a Monday like before. Before we get started on today's episode of Quick Bites with HR Bites, I invite our entire live audience. I invite our live audience to give a minute of silence for what happened in the most beautiful part of our country. And just like the echo that I was hearing when I was streaming across multiple platforms a couple of minutes ago, echoes of gunshots, echoes of questions being asked, echoes of people being segregated and then being shot. For families that have been impacted, for people that have lost their loved ones, it's never been easy. Quick Bites with HR Bites is all about bringing to you stories that matter, bringing to you conversations that inspire, but more importantly, also having the heart. It appalls me that people are shooting videos and people are putting stuff out, which is so insensitive. And to talk about insensitivity, there are all kinds of people in the world. There were some of my guests who actually came in the past and said, Sahil, you've just done 3 posts for us. Why don't you make a different post? Why don't you put out more posts? Talk a little bit about my organization. Talk about the brand that I have built for myself. It would be a great publicity for me. And then on the other end of the spectrum, my guest tonight is someone who says, Sahil, please don't write anything too fancy. Are you sure you want me to be on your podcast? I can get you many other people who are far better than me, were her words. But deep within, I knew that she would be one of the best people to be on the show tonight. For those of you who are watching this, and for those of you who know her, she had an exigency that she had to attend to. But as things normalized, she was the first person to say, let's do this. Of course, half heartedly, because she shies away from the camera. Although in her work, she's brilliant at what she does. And again, you can see I'm fumbling for words, something that I haven't done in the recent past. But without further ado, I have absolute pleasure in bringing to you a lady. A lady who is, okay, I'm not going to say anything. The words are flowing naturally, but I'm not going to say anything because you know what? If I get onto the toe of actually telling you who she is, the first line that she's going to say is, that's not true. And Sahil, that's not me. And I'm going to be under the bus. So I'm just going to bring her on screen. And if you are listening in live, you can give us a virtual round of applause. And I see a lot of people on the chat saying we are looking forward to her perspective. So without further ado, Mamta, thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be on Quick Bites with HR.
Thanks to you. It was so kind and gracious of you to invite, and I'm very nervous. I've never been this nervous earlier.
I think the feeling is mutual. Um, I have never been so nervous. I have never fumbled with words. And I don't know whether it's you or whether it's the environment or whether it's just the fact that this conversation is going to be so unscripted because you kept asking me, what are we going to talk about? And I kept telling you, I don't know. Until now, I don't know. Just 10 minutes before the show, you said you're going to roll reverse. So I don't know where this is heading, but let's go for it. It's always great to have a conversation with you. And I see a lot of people who joined in live who are also equally excited to hear this conversation. Wherever you've joined in from, people, thank you, Mohammed. Thank you, Abhilasha. Wherever you guys have joined in from, do let us know in the comments. We would love to know if you've joined in, if you're listening in live. And of course, Dhiren, couldn't agree more with you. I love the fact that you all didn't get me to do the introduction, but on the comments, you are introducing Mamta as the ace writer. So, Mamta, what would you like to talk about?
Let's talk about what you just mentioned, and you mentioned on the post the stories behind the stories. Uh, for once, let me ask you, what is it when you share a story and you are a storyteller yourself, and I have been reading your posts and perspectives. Uh, as a reader or a listener or even the one who writes, what is it that you would want to put out? What is it that motivates you to put out that kind of a post or a perspective? What goes behind that thought? What is the thought behind that story?
I think over the years, Mamta, I have evolved as a story writer. Earlier, like any typical story, it would be a protagonist, it would be a climax, and of course, towards the end, a lesson or a gyan that I would love to share with people. And more often than not, I would, at the back of my head, love to be the protagonist. But over the years, I've realized that it's great to put the spotlight on others. Over the
True.
years, I've realized that every story doesn't need to have a corporate lesson linked to it. And
Absolutely.
over the years, I've also realized that the stories that touch you are not fabricated stories or borrowed stories without giving credit, or stories that um, are just cooked up because they have a great tagline or a great recall, but maybe stories that touch the heart. So whenever I think of writing a story, I think of what is it that will touch people's hearts, that will move them, and that will sit with them and linger on days, weeks, and months after they have heard or read this story. So that's some of the things that I'm working on right now. But you tell me, you've been writing in the space for way too long, and you're not going to escape this one. But I have seen you, being associated with various organizations, writing in different formats. What gets you? Because it's very different when a Sahil who is with a full-time role and then writing a story, whereas Mamta, whose job is about writing or bringing stories to people. So, is there a target? Is there the fear that this story has to be a popular story? Is there a mandate that TRPs have to come in whatever form or shape? Is there a compulsion where the person who is paying for the story wants the story to be written a certain way, but Mamta is not convinced? Does Mamta push back? Sorry, I've asked you 10 questions in one question, but you can
No,
choose to
I'll be
answer
happy
one.
to answer all of them. I'll be happy to answer all of them. All this would happen if I'm working for an organization which I'm not working for any longer. Of course, when you work with an organization, you do have to write a certain narrative. You do look for views because that's what your job is. I feel blessed that I can choose to quit and do what I want to do. For me, there is no compulsion. For me, there is not a hunger of TRPs or views. My story or a post may not go viral, but even if it has one lesson for anyone who's reading it, I think my job is done, and that has been my that is what I look forward to when I share a story. There has to be a meaningful takeaway at the end of the story or after reading the story. One must and should be able to apply it in their lives, be it a workplace or a life story. And I learn as well, I recently interviewed a woman farmer leader. She's been working for 3 decades, and she says she looks for no appreciation. She has never been covered. There have been farmer protests for so long now. She goes on to say that I just do my job and with so much conviction. She's not looking for appreciation, and she has all the leadership qualities that any Fortune 500 CEO would have. The lessons that she shared at the end of the conversation, and one of that stayed with me was, women should have a strong voice, and they should be able to put forward that voice in a boardroom or a home, or at a workplace. Now that is a lesson you would also hear all these big women leaders sharing, even at workplace and the corporate world. So I think that you have to find those leaders around yourself. That is a takeaway from me. I share that story. I'm sure it is a takeaway for anyone who's reading it, a homemaker, or an employee, a leader. That's the entire idea for sharing anything that I do now. Of course, we would get stories that we had to do because of PR, or for news related. That was the case when I worked with certain organizations. But now I feel very happy. I feel very free. I Most of my story ideas for post and all is influenced or even inspired from my son, who goes on to talk about goals and well-being and trust and whatnot. And it's overwhelming to see him talk about it. I'm so very happy to share what I share. See, I feel, and the reason when I started writing, I didn't know that how important a workplace is in everyone's personal life. Now, every life story is a workplace story, and every workplace story is a life story. There is no different whatsoever. Your days is bad, something wrong happening at work, it directly impacts your life. So that's how I see it. That's my perspective.
Beautiful. How old is your son?
He's 10. He's going to be 10 now.
He's going to be
And you
10
know
and he's
what?
already talking about trust and
Oh, yes.
well-being and
So, I just, before this podcast, I happened to tell him, his name is Kabir. I call him Joey. I said, Joey, I'm very nervous. You know what he tells me? He says, Mama, I believe in you. I'm sure you believe in yourself too. And that's the confidence that you get from a 10-year-old. I'm very, very happy to see him growing up
oh
to be
my
an
God.
emotionally confident person. So, yeah.
I think as parents, you must have definitely done something right to have this coming in back to you, and just making you feel a little less nervous, a little less anxious just before the
Absolutely.
podcast.
I was very glad to hear him say that, and I share a lot of my views with him, and he gives a very, very honest feedback.
Brilliant. So, is he your biggest critic?
I won't say that, he's too young. I churao his ideas. So
Too
he doesn't
young
know
to
that
be a
I'm doing
critic?
it. He doesn't know that I'm doing it well. So, not that I want to tell him. So I did read a post recently on LinkedIn where, a mother was talking about how the teenager is not so happy about, sharing lessons from his life or what he talks about it. So I'm sure when he becomes a teenager, he will have similar thoughts. But I'm
Interesting.
very curious. We're talking about stories and what one covers with what intention. You are When you read HRs, and we have so many media platforms covering HR, workplace, everything. What is it that grabs your attention, and what is it that you would want to read? What is it that is lacking? I've asked these questions to many of them, but I would like to hear it from you because you're so active in this, this entire space of writing and hearing and sharing stories.
I think, Mamta, without being critical, I think authenticity is significantly missing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You go to any conference, you go to any blogs, you go to read any websites. It's the same jargon that is being refurbished over and over and over again.
absolutely.
It's just old wine in a new bottle. And what I am looking out for is fresh perspective. So maybe just two things. Either you tell me something that I don't already know,
Yeah,
or I would love to read something that I know but never looked at from that angle.
yeah, yeah,
And I never thought about it, saying, oh my God, I never looked at talent acquisition from a lens of empathy.
yeah.
Or I never looked at learning and development from a gamified point of view that is linked to, let's say, in your case, your son being able to achieve some of his goals if his mother achieves some of his goals, right? And therefore integrating home and work. So I'm saying whether it's authenticity, whether it is new perspectives, or whether it is path breaking work. I've said this for the longest time. I think a lot of people who are out there in this space dedicating their time to community building or giving back to the fraternity, uh, there is a sizable chunk, but there is also a sizable chunk of people who are doing amazing work, but either
Absolutely.
don't believe in this, or don't want to go out there, or want to be low key, or don't find the time, whatever may be their reasons. And I think that's the way it is. So, yeah.
I absolutely agree. Even at workplace, there are voices, and we even discussed it earlier. There are voices that are not even, you know, heard or are in the forefront. We always talk about big leaders. We are interviewing them. There are these middle-level managers, and I come across so many. I particularly talk about women workforce. I come across so many of them who have either left the workforce. We read all these studies, we have these back to work initiatives and all of that, but the reality is very, very different. Nobody is talking about it. I'm sure there are organizations who are doing a good job of it, but there are many others for whom it is just a tick in the box, maybe, or the women who are getting back to work, or the ones who are living, are not getting the support that they need, or their voice is not heard. So that is the section of workplace I think needs to be heard, and that is the perspective I think that should be, we should put it out more often.
Very true. And I think there are two thoughts that come to my mind as you say this, right, Mamta, especially about women either coming back to the workforce post motherhood, or a woman who actually move out of the workforce and then find it very difficult to even come back for whatever reasons that they've chosen to take a break. One is voices not being heard,
Yeah,
but at the other end of the spectrum, I also see a lot of voices being silenced,
yeah, yeah.
right? And I think the magic is the space in between. You know,
Absolutely.
can you really have and enjoy that space where you can speak? Not always you might be heard, but at least you can speak,
Speak. Yeah, yeah.
rather than being silenced. Because once you've been silenced, you may not want to speak again.
So, that reminds me of a conversation I had recently with the neurodivergent employee. We were interviewing him, and he goes on to say, he did explain, the biases that he faces professionally and personally. But at the end, he also said that, Mamta, I'm so used to it. So I think that's the silence that you're talking about, because he doesn't choose to fight it back for whatever may be the reason for not including him, the challenges that he faces. And one might say that, why would you join an organization if it doesn't serve your purpose, or you're not being included? But not many have that choice. Everyone has to earn for a family. You do not have that choice. So in certain cases, they choose to be in an organization and be silent, because that's the only way to be. There could be various reasons for the same, but I totally agree to what you just said.
Correct. We have a lot of live audience here as well. So if you have any questions for Mamta, although she hates it, but put it on the chat. We love to bring them to her, and I'm sure she would love to answer them as well. But Mamta, tell me, coming back to writing stories and taking stories out, you spoke about the freedom that you have now as an independent journalist, right? Which was not as much when you were working for a certain organization. How do you decide to pick stories? I know I met someone over the weekend who told me, um, and he's also a huge influencer on LinkedIn, and he says, listen, I don't write about my organization, I don't write about my competitors, I don't write about religion, and I don't write about politics. And if at all I have to write something, I write about, in every post of mine, I give credit to my boss, because my insecure boss feels very happy when he gets credit for something that he hasn't done at all. So that's on a lighter note, but I'm saying, how do you pick your stories? How do you decide
It's like,
whether today has to be dedicated to this story, or this can wait? Is there a sequence? Is there a flow? Is there a prioritization?
so it's very ad hoc, but I still have, a rule that I follow, like I mentioned in the beginning. There has to be a meaningful takeaway for me, for the audience. And this comes after I've had a conversation with whoever I'm interviewing or writing the story about. I mostly do such kind of posts or stories where I've already had a conversation or have experienced something. So it's not like a research, it's just kind of a thing where I don't get a learning myself. That is my biggest, rule that I follow. Also, I'm not I won't call myself as an activist who's shouting headlines. I don't want to do that. I always feel that there are companies who are out there to build their employer brand, and it's fair, and so it's okay to have those polished campaigns. They're worth telling sometimes, but you can always offer a balance. When I say balance, that you might talk about a well-being initiative that a company is doing, but you can always choose to ask the unscripted side of it, that does a yoga session really help an employee? Do you think a day off when he's going through a family crisis will help him more? Or for instance, I do hear so many of these influencers coming for well-being week and well-being days at organizations. Fair enough, everyone is there, they have that mandate, but I doubt that an employee or a mid-level manager would have much of the well-being coming out of from there. I see women who actually, in certain cases where they have a well-being week, therefore they struggle to come back home because they have to pick up their kids from school or from a class, and so their entire idea is defeated. So we have to revisit certain initiatives. And that is the kind of questions we can ask. So, we do not have to demean any organization or a leader that you're interviewing or writing about. You can also, publish or, put forward their wins, but there are gaps. And I'm sure a good leader will be able to answer that. He or she will choose to answer it. That's the balance that we need to create. You don't really have to sensationalize everything. And I don't want to do that. You can always look for solutions. I think that helps everyone.
Beautiful. Mamta, tell us about one story from your life that people know, but they don't know the story behind it, because every story has a story behind.
That's a tricky one. I mean, if I tell you that story that people don't know, so I think I'll skip that one. Anything else that you would want me to share? Why would you not tell us that story, the story behind the story that people know about you?
That's exactly why I was avoiding asking some of these questions, because I knew you'll flip them right back at
Of
me.
course. If a story that's not known and I haven't told anyone, why would I share it
Hmm.
here?
Right,
Absolute
right.
pleasure to talk to you. And so, there's a learning, and I never used to work. I never used to write with HR and workplace until a few years back. But the moment I started writing, there's so much of learning. There is so much to do, and in your own small ways. I have had feedback. I have had conversations where people read. I'm not saying I'm doing an extraordinary job. I also talk to leaders and I put forward their views, but some of them have helped some people take decisions. And I think everyone is a storyteller. Sile today, we have LinkedIn full of so many stories. So I won't say I am good or the other person is not good. What all of us can do is have that meaningful story out there to help. That's how we are helping each other, by sharing stories. You write something, and I get a lesson, a meaningful lesson out of it. That's the only idea, and that's how I do it.
Sure. And I think since you flipped it back at me, it's only
Yes.
fair that I also answer the
Yes.
question.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think a lot of people, when I go for events or conferences or speaking at various forums, the feedback generally is that, Sahil, you have a very nice voice or a great baritone or some of that, right? And it's like complimenting a lady and saying you're looking very beautiful. And the lady is going to say, listen, but I spoke so much of sense on the panel, or I, picked up such valid points, or I shared such useful case studies.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
all you had to compliment me for is saying I'm looking beautiful in the sari. So it's like, it actually feels like that, saying, oh, you have a very nice voice. But I'm saying, okay, beyond the voice, there is also a little bit of gray matter. But I think the story behind the story, which many people don't know, is during my childhood in school, I used to actually have a lot of stutter, and that came with a lot of bullying, and came with a lot of loss of self confidence because of the entire ragging that I went through. And it took me years and even a decade to actually overcome that and to regain my self confidence. So, therefore, the Sahil that many people see today as someone who can address a crowd of 10,000 people, who can catch the audience attention, who can engage with different formats and with different audiences. Very, very few people know the story behind the real story, which is about someone who used to stammer, someone who had lost self confidence, and someone who was very happy just being in his cocoon because that felt safe. And being in front of hundreds of thousands of people felt very intimidating. But I think we all go through our journey and we all overcome challenges that we face. I think that's my answer to that question.
Exactly, and that is the story behind the story that every workplace also has when you talk about inclusion. There are so many people who come from a diverse workforce who have a story behind their own story that is being seen, and imagine no one knows about it. I remember once attending a workplace event, and LGBTQ even, and there were panelists who had such traumatic stories to share. Even when they are at a workplace and they say that the trauma that they go through, and we keep hiring a diverse workforce, we keep talking about inclusion, and there are organizations doing a very good job on paper and practice. I won't deny that, but I particularly remember this one where a trans woman who was in the panelist, she says that during work lunches and the recent lunch that she had, she says that everyone asked everyone about what you did over the weekend except me, as if I don't have a family or as if I don't have anything else to share. She says that I was hired, and that was a part of the organization's initiative, but that's not inclusion for me. I still suffer that bias because I'm being discriminated against. So if you cannot include a person when the spotlight is off, I don't think it's worth it. And there's so many other examples you keep hearing them. So my experiences are not working in organizations. It's all from leaders that I've spoken to, or employees that I come across, or friends who continue to work in the corporate world. There are a lot of stories, and so many of them behind each story that we shared today.
Right. So, Mamta, given that you talk to so many people across different domains, different specialization, different organizations, can you recall any kind of story where someone pretended to be okay, but they weren't really okay, and then they sat with you and maybe they broke down, or in a conversation you touched a nerve? You don't need to disclose identity, but you can tell us a little bit about that story of how did that person play out and how did you support the individual? Anything of that sort.
See, it's not
And
one
what
of
really
it
moved for
has
you? What moved for
it,
you?
it hasn't been a one-off experiences. It's not that I would have many also, but whenever I've spoken to a woman leader or an employee or a startup founder, uh, they absolutely relate to the questions that I ask them. They go an extra mile to explain everything that they've gone through, the guilt that they come with. It is so relatable. Of course, they don't break down as such, but they give a very meaningful perspective to the audience, or to to me, because I'm interviewing them. But in their hearts they end up telling me that Mamta, how much ever we do this, how much ever strength we have to go back to work, but leaving your child behind is a big thing. That guilt will never go. Of course, they're strong enough, some of them are strong enough to take that leap. So that has been the most common, very emotional conversation has happened to me 2 3 times when I've spoken to some of these leaders. And they do put a brave face. I'm sure everyone goes through it. Since I particularly emotionally is very inclined towards this topic, so I think that is what comes to my mind. And there's another one. I remember one LGBT activist. I would speak to the person often, and once she tells me there was a story that I wanted to do with her, and she chose to say that I cannot disclose this, and she is a LGBTQ activist. I said, you are an inspiration for so many of them. Why would you not talk about it? About same-sex marriages or something like that, or talking about the partner. She says that her family also doesn't know about it. So there are times that the people that we see, how they come across to us, even influencers or activists, they are suffering, they're fighting their own battle personally. Of course, they're inspiring a whole lot of them, but there's these are the stories behind the stories that I come across, and it's very, very traumatic to even hear that. There are so many others who say that, we might go for a talk, and we are well received, but at the end of the day, I am a trans woman, and I don't have a partner. I don't have anyone to talk to. I may have 10 friends, but at the end of the day, I need a partner. I don't have a. I particularly talk about this because these are the events that I attend, some diverse workforce events that I'm invited to. So all of this,
Yeah,
yeah.
true, true. Mamta, if you allow me, would love to take you back to your childhood, and I think that's the time a lot of our personality also gets shaped. Um, Anything about your childhood that you'd like to share that has shaped you who you are today?
So, I would call my childhood a very fulfilling and a disciplined experience. My father was in the army, and I won't say we had a luxurious life, but we had a very fulfilling life. Today, when I look back, maybe at that time I would want to have so many other things. When I look back today, I won't trade it for anything else. We had the best of lessons from my father. He would not, today we talk about diversity and we say, oh, the man should know this, the boy should know this, the girl should know this. My dad would teach that during those times when DEI was not the buzzword, or was talked about so much. uh, if that is what has shaped me, I feel very confident to. And being honest and kind. Kindness is the biggest thing for me. I teach that to my son. I always tell him, you can choose to do, you can choose to miss something, but you have to be kind. I feel very proud that, when I meet his friends, and when, they happen to, when I ask them, one thing that you like about him, the first thing that they tell me is, Kabir is very kind. I think I feel very, very happy that I could bring that virtue to him.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it's going on generation to generation. A fulfilling
Not
life.
really, not really generation, but that's what it is, no, Sahil. I
True.
think being honest and kind. I think it does everything else. Everything else is taken care of when you talk about empathy and
Yeah,
all of that. Take any scenario. If you're kind and empathetic, I think your job is done. I mean,
that's
you
true.
really don't
Very,
have
very,
to.
very true. If Mamta was a book, and I'm just asking this question after listening to you for a while now, but if Mamta was a book and someone had to read the book, what's the best way to read the book cover to cover?
That's a very, very fancy thing to ask. Let me ask you a question. We let me ask you one. You asked me how do I choose my stories and all. Have you ever come across situations when you really wanted to put
Mamta,
out
don't buy
something?
time. Don't buy time. Don't buy time for the question. No, no, no. I'm not going to let you buy time.
And then you
I'm
didn't feel
waiting.
to
I'm
go.
waiting. Come on.
No,
You want to
I
repeat
really
the
want
question?
to, the conversation
Okay,
is
go
as
ahead.
much
Go
as
ahead.
yours, as much as it is mine. And we decided that we'll have a conversation where we both of us can learn,
Absolutely.
others listening to us can learn. I always wonder, what is it that, there is a content flowing, and, we might crib about it. Like you mentioned that, you go to conferences and somebody is just appreciating the way you talk or the voice that you have. You think it is the audience has a the audience has a big role to play to the kind of content that is being shared. And is there a time that you also, as a writer or somebody who's active on social media, you have to think twice before you put out something that is, you want to call out something but you're apprehensive, or you take a step back because of repercussions? Do you have any such situations? Have you come across something like that?
I think that's a very deep question. And the reason why I think it's a very deep question is because the roots of this question, to my mind, are deeply embedded in psychology. I think it's very, very important. What is the writer chasing? Right? I think, like you mentioned, and you've said that a couple of times since we started speaking today, that you chase meaning. There could be someone else who's chasing followers, someone may be chasing likes, someone may be chasing alternate perspectives and therefore comments on the post. Someone may be trying desperately to go viral. So it depends what you're chasing. And even before that, it is even more important that do you even know your audience? So are
Yeah,
you
very
building
important.
content for the audience and therefore saying that I am Salman Khan and I know कि ईद पे ये movie जाएगी तो बजरंगी भाईजान will be a super hit,
Yeah,
or if Sikandar is slightly different, Sikandar will flop because people don't associate Salman Khan with a Sikandar. They maybe associate Salman Khan with a kick, and therefore a kick or a Bajrangi Bhaijan will be far more successful commercially and at the box office than a Sikandar. So I think it's about knowing the audience. It's about also knowing what does your audience look up to you for, or why do they come and read your post, or what do they read it for, right? What are they looking out for? And third is, are you writing for yourself? Are you making this movie because this story really inspires me and I want to take the story to the world and I'm doing it for myself? Or am I doing it because I want to make money or I want fame or I need to release one more movie every year to stay relevant? What's the reason why I'm doing it? And I think answering that why and then aligning your action to the why, I think is very, very important. So there are all kinds of people chasing all kinds of metrics, and I think it just very clearly reflects in behavior. But the irony is, not many people will tell you what they're chasing.
true,
So
true.
if you ask someone, why do you write on LinkedIn every day?
Yeah,
कहते नहीं बस आदत सी है, बस मन करता है. But people ask me, the biggest cliche I have seen in the world is people call me. And for a matter of fact, you also know that a lot of these people call people to tell them to call them.
yeah,
But they go and tell the world that people call me, right? So, the irony is, you may think you're intelligent, but don't think the other person's stupid. So I think that's very important. And the
absolutely.
more authentic you are, the more important it is. Like, there are so many people out there who put fancy stuff on social media, but if you actually sit in that event or in that conference, you will know that there is a huge gap between what you're seeing had you not attended that event and you're seeing it on social media versus what actually happened at that event. And
I
it is so
totally
different.
agree. That is one thing I relate to.
You do?
Absolutely. I totally agree to that insight. And, this is your perspective. That's how you see it. But do you think, you are there in the corporate world more than me? I would see them from an outside lens. When you're there inside, do you think people, employees or otherwise, they are also very apprehensive of we talk about social media, you have these likes and some post going viral, could be the most hopeless of it all. Do you think it is a fad because there is some big leader or somebody big, an influencer writing it, and they have this compulsion to do this, or there and they would not support some good, meaningful writing or post? Do you think that is the case when you see social media from your perspective?
So, Mamta, to be very honest and candid with you, which is exactly what Quick Bites with HR Bites is all about, I know of people who run mid-size organizations, and every day the post goes on the work WhatsApp group, and everybody is supposed to like it.
Oh, wow.
And there is someone actually making a record of who is not liked the post, and there is a follow-up WhatsApp that goes to say, listen, you need to like the post. And that's the kind of pressure, because then it gets linked to performance, it gets linked to salary. As bizarre as it may sound, it starts off as introduction, saying this is the way things work here, and then it becomes an unwritten rule that within the team or within a small organization of 50 employees, everyone needs to, and it's projected saying this will get us more business. If we get more business as 50 of us as a small team, we will get more bonus. And a lot of people can see through that narrative to say, listen, if I didn't like 10 posts of yours, we would get X amount of less business. which for me as an analyst or a fresher or a team member would mean 5,000 rupees lesser bonus.
Which is a big
And
thing
that's
for
a
the fresh.
random calculation that a
Yeah,
person,
yeah, yeah.
which is a big thing for the fresher, but the fresher also is saying, listen, you're taking away my freedom,
Yeah,
which is not equivalent to 5,000 rupees. You
absolutely.
can't make me do something that I don't want to do. And therefore, I don't resonate with this place. I don't resonate with this environment. I don't resonate with this culture.
Yeah.
So I have also seen that, and I've had people who walked up to me with very pertinent questions to say, listen, Sahil, I need this job. But every time I am forced to like something or promote something that I don't believe in, I feel stifled. So, how do I manage that? And these are not easy questions to answer.
Absolutely.
But
Now
yes,
that
to
is the
answer your
real
question,
story
Mom,
behind the story. Now
yes.
that is the real story behind the story. And if you had to answer, what do you answer? What is your answer to them? How does one manage? Actually, there are many of them going through this. There are some who just do not. They are not there on social media. They don't want to be there. But to the ones who are there, and you often also come across these employees who have a big outburst on social media about the organization they're leaving. Then how do we, figure out if it is the right, that's the right perspective from the employee or the organization. There is a post, and everyone is on it, whatever the incident has happened. Of course it will be biased most times. Then how do you navigate that thin line between deciding, if you had to read a post by an employee who's left an organization, how do you decide that I should believe the person or not? And this is also a learning for the larger community social media audience, so that they can do going forward.
Now it's my opportunity to flip the question back at you.
So you
So,
want me
how
to
would you
answer
do
this?
it, Mamta? Yeah.
How do I?
How would you do it? How would you evaluate whether it's a genuine post or it's a forced post or it's under coercion? How would you evaluate?
See, exactly what you said, that everyone has a different perspective, or a reason to share, or uh, like certain posts. And for me, I would not judge. The best thing is to not judge. So I will also not go with the trend. I'm not saying that I will like or not like, or I believe it. In fact, most times, and something which is there in news, which is a breaking news happening to most big organizations, I choose to differ within, because there is a narrative that is being told, and it's there all over the media. And there is these one or two people, whom you talk beyond work, or the ones around you, who will end up telling you that this is not what the person meant, and this is not how it is. But nobody is willing to listen. So I don't judge them. I don't even believe them. Until and unless it is affecting me. But of course, I don't even choose to support them. I think that's the best way I do it. My problem is not even the problem. What I feel disappointed about is that if there is a trend, positive or negative, there are people just blindly talking about it, writing about it, putting it out there, trivializing the entire. There's a study about. I remember a few years back, 2 3 years, we had this quiet quitting and whatever, what not. I also wrote. I mean, I used to work with an organization. We would write about these trends because they are in news. But I remember someone telling me there's nothing new. All these trends always existed. And by writing about a trend, which was a study of a few thousand or even hundred of employees, I think we are just not being fair. So, yeah, that's my take on it.
That's true. Brilliant. That's nice.
What do you have to say about these studies? You also come across so many of them, these workplace trends and studies. As an employee, how right, or how relevant it is in when you work around. Do you think these are relevant studies that are put out in the media? What
I
employees
think
go
yes
through?
and no. I think yes and no. It's like
Yeah,
a classic case of the media picking up something happening in some village and saying that this product has so much of chemical, right? Great story, breaking
yeah,
news. It
yeah,
is
yeah,
injurious to consumption. But then, when the forces come behind that, the story dies in 24 hours. The chemicals continue in that product, and you and I keep consuming it.
Absolutely.
So, my question is whether it is a genuine story, whether it's a story that has a meaning. Unfortunately, in the life of destruction, unfortunately, in the life of distractions that we all live in, many of these stories have shelf lives much shorter than we would want them to have,
Yeah.
because a story has to be long enough for it to drive change in behavior. But if a story has come in and it's hit me with a bang, but it's not touched my life personally, unfortunately, in the next 2 hours, I have another story that's caught my attention.
Absolutely.
So the previous story has gone on to the back burner. And I
True.
think that's the challenge that we have in the times that we live in.
Absolutely, I totally agree. So, the most powerful stories are not the one that are, viral. They're the ones who like deeply they people resonate, and it affects few hearts. They have an impact, they leave an impact. Those are the ones which are most, and those are the stories that matter. Those are the stories, they must be the most simplest of all. I remember, I go back to the examples that I do. I work with organizations who are not fancy, but they choose to publish stories which have meaning, which can resonate with people. Talking to a woman, a mother who has an autistic kid, and to me, it is a very, very meaningful story. There are so many parents who suffer along, and I would say suffer because you can give a fancy term of inclusion and all of it, but on ground reality, you see them, and in a place like Bangalore and all those fancy apartments that we live in, they crave for that inclusion. And I think these are the things that are affecting everyone's life. We may go to the workplace, we can talk about talent management and whatnot, employee well-being and stuff like that. But even when you talk about employee well-being, I think it stems from the home that he's coming from, the personal experiences that he's having at home or otherwise. So I totally agree that a story that one deeply resonates with, or it affects someone's heart, I think those are worth sharing. Of course, it's also a job. All journalists have to do their job. There are media houses who have to earn a profit there, but we all can have. When we talk about particularly workplace and HR, I think we can always offer balance
Correct.
while sharing these stories.
But Mamta, tell me, given that you've been closely associated with this space of journalism, what's your take on paid media? So let's say there is an organization that wants to build their brand or their employer brand, or there's an organization that's gone through a crisis and wants to recover from it and reposition itself in terms of good policies, employee practices, so on and so forth. Where would you, in your own judgment, say this is okay and this is not okay when it comes to a paid story?
So I see. I am not associated with the organization anymore, so it won't come to
Correct.
me. But uh, uh, of course, it's also on the other side. It's not only the organization who's wanting to pay and get stories published, be it, getting the employer branding and stuff. It's also the media houses. We all know that there are paid stories. They have prizes for somebody's interview to be published and all of that. That is how it works. Fair enough. And it's like that advertorial. We all have it. All media organizations have it. What I feel that a media, if there's something really, really wrong with a practice that an organization is following, or something that it's affecting its employees, and everyone knows, we all know, even if we've not been a part of an organization or a person or a brand, I think we all know what people are consuming and how their reputation, if they are trying to build, I think that is where the discussion comes in. It's okay, you can just choose to let go of that one brand, that one paid story. That's how you are honest, and you're also kind to your readers. You're not flaunting, you're not putting it out for others to believe in that myth or a lie that you're sharing. I don't know if it
No,
makes sense, but that's how I feel.
no, that is absolutely makes a lot of sense. And as we come to the last segment, Mamta, if you watched some of the previous episodes, it might be a saving grace for you. But if you haven't, you got to promise me that you can't back out. You got to promise me that you can't say skip. And you got to promise me that you will be fun, you will be fast, and you will be rapid, and you will be fiery. Because I want to have a rapid fire with you as
I'm
we
so,
conclude
so
this.
bad with this. I would have no answers for you, but you can try.
No, I'll start with very, very simple questions and then we will warm up. Is that okay? Very simple questions.
You've not given me a choice. I'm telling you, there might be no answers, but you can try since it is your,
Don't
I
don't
mean,
kill me. Don't kill me for this one. Okay, very simple. Mountains or beaches?
beaches, any day.
Beautiful. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset for me.
Wonderful. See, Mamta, you're doing so well. Pav Bhaji or Chinese?
If those are the questions, then I'm willing to answer all of them.
Pav Bhaji or Chinese?
Pav Bhaji.
Fine dine roadside.
Now, fine dining when I was an intern or, when I was in Delhi, any day roadside. But today, if you ask me, I fear eating on the roadside for all that is happening and all the ailments that we get. So, yeah,
Since you
I might
mentioned
sound very
Delhi,
elitist,
got
but
it.
that's how I feel.
Lovely. Since you mentioned Delhi, Golgappe or Bangalore's dosa and filter coffee.
Any day Golgappe. Somebody who's graduated from Delhi, Bhelpuri, not even Golgappe.
Acha,
I remember,
Bhelpuri.
yeah, Bhelpuri. One of the best Bhelpuris I had was when I used to work with Deccan Chronicle, and there was this Asian Age office. We had this Bhelpuri guy right down, and that used to be even our lunch most times. And if any of my friends is watching this, they will relate to this Bhelpuri lunch that we often had along with other
Got
conversation.
it.
Yeah.
So you've done very, very well, Mamta, in the practice round. Now we'll actually start the rapid fire, okay?
Please continue these questions. Anyways, we're almost all done. It's 8:50. I think it's a Monday evening. You have another working day tomorrow. People would want to have their dinner or maybe rest.
Sure. What's the secret talent that Mamta has that no one knows about?
That no one knows about. I make amazing pickles.
Amazing pickles.
Yeah.
Wow,
If you
lovely.
ask,
Okay. If you ask,
if you no, I mean, I'm assuming that you're asking me from any
yeah, yeah,
perspective. I
yeah, of
mean,
course. Any talent. Any talent is good talent.
I won't say anyone would not know the ones, but yeah, I mean, the ones who are very close to me, of course, they will know. My family is
Super.
eating it. So, but yeah,
Since we are on pickles, a food you secretly hate.
secretly hate. I doubt I hate any food because that was one of the biggest blessing that I've had being an army kid. We ate everything, and we also loved everything. I remember my dad, and he still does it for me. He makes a weekly food plan, and this time when he visited me, he made one for me. I follow it or not is another question now, but those days we would follow it religiously, and I so miss that lifestyle in this entire race of working, earning. Of course everything is important. Today you
Right.
ask me that is money, of course it is important, and then we can choose to live this life because we are earning well.
Correct.
But there are so many other things that are missed, and food, like, since you said that food, for instance, is one of the biggest blessings that we had. The kind of food we ate, the nutrition that we got then, we never ate out. I don't remember eating out for the first 10-15 years of my life, and I'm not kidding.
Wow. Brilliant. One habit you have that would surprise people.
One habit that I have that would surprise people. I also don't know that habit that would surprise people.
Okay, I'm going to change gears now. Tell us the age at which you had your first heartbreak. Only the
Heartbreak,
age.
is it?
We don't need further details. Heartbreak.
I thought you will ask me. You will ask me. Tell us the age when many others had a heartbreak. I mean, why would I have a heartbreak?
That's a good one. Now you're getting into the groove. That's a nice one. What was your
It's
dream
very
job
honest.
as a
I
kid?
told you all my answers are very honest, and I'm not pretending. That should have been the right questions. Never had a heartbreak. Trust me, and I'm not exaggerating.
Brilliant. What was your dream job as a kid? What did you want to
Dream
become?
job. Yeah,
Yeah.
as a kid, when I really did not have, like, my son wanted to be a construction worker when he was 3 years old. And we were like, why are we even sending him?
Amazing.
Yeah, yeah, he would love all this construction site, those vehicles and toys and all. So we asked him once, what do you want to become when you grow up? He says, Mama, a construction worker. I said, why? I said, but that was very meaningful then also. He says, it's the construction workers who are making these buildings. Imagine at the age of 3 and 4, he chooses to say that. Of course, he
Wow.
laughs over it now. But when I was his age, or slightly, when I was 7, 8 or something, I think that time I wanted to be an air hostess. I absolutely was in awe of air hostesses, and I loved that job. It's how now we know what goes behind any profession, but that time I really wanted to be one.
Got it. A book that changed your life,
A book that changed my life. Won't say,
or that helped you build perspective, or that really was very profound, or a book that you love
very
reading again
recent
and again.
actually. I would always read these autobiography, or initially the first one I read was about won't talk about those books. Very recent one that actually changed me, because books won't change me, to be frank enough. I The one that I picked up, a friend suggested, was Atomic Habits, and in which they say that any habit that you have to change, you have to start with those 10 minutes. I religiously followed it. Something that I wanted to change. It did change. Won't say changed my life, but of course the habits that I wanted to inculcate, and yeah, it does improve. It did improve what I wanted to do.
Got it. A movie that you watched more than 10 times. Are you a
More than
movie
10
buff?
times.
Five
Yeah,
times,
yeah,
10 times.
absolutely, absolutely. I love Shah Rukh Khan, and this is unapologetic. If people don't listening to it, don't like it, that's not my problem. I love Shah Rukh Khan. So 10 times, huh? DDLJ is one movie, uh, not 10 times, and Kuch Kuch Hota Hai. So it's very very cliched and very typical of a Shah Rukh Khan fan.
Beautiful.
But Kuch Kuch Hota Hai, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I can watch it any number of times, even during my board exams. It was that time. The movies would be, they would come on some channels or something. I watched it. I remember I had an SST paper or something, and I mugged up everything I had to just to watch that movie because it was coming on TV. So
Wow.
that's the movie. Yeah,
A guilty pleasure Shah Rukh Khan song, since you're a Shah Rukh Khan fan.
guilty pleasure shark. Nothing that comes to my mind. We can have the next one.
Okay, one superstition that you secretly believe in. A
Once
superstition.
nazar lagti hai, that is what I believe in, and I saw my mom doing it all the time. Yeah, like that. I do it to my 3-year-old golden retriever. So anytime that he's not well, or he's, even if to the extent that he's barking too much, I was like nazar lagi hai, because I would take him for walks, and somebody would go, "Oh, what a handsome boy," and I says, "Aaj nazar lagi hai." So that is one thing that I follow.
Kala, kala tikka.
And this is not to, this is not to propagate this superstition. It's just to each their own. That is what I follow.
Got
Yeah.
it. Your favorite city to live in, apart from Bangalore, where you currently live.
Favorite city to live in. I like Bombay actually. For many years, my dad was posted there, and we lived in Colaba, and I thought Bombay was Colaba that time. I really loved that place. I was very young, and we had a big, beautiful house right in front of. It was sea facing. I kept telling my dad that why can't we stay back here? Why can't you just buy a house here? Imagine those times in the 90s, asking my dad to buy a house in Colaba, an army officer, and. So yeah, that is. If you ask me today, maybe not any other part of Bombay, because for me that is Bombay. So I would want to stay there, and that is what I
I think the
personally.
headline of this podcast is going to be Bombay is Kolaba.
As a child, what would you say? The army. You would know. You're staying in
I know.
Bombay. For us,
Yeah.
that was our world. We had a
Yeah.
school there. We really loved staying there. I absolutely enjoyed my time. And I'm not kidding. We were very, very disappointed when, imagine, from Bombay, my father was posted in Meerut. So you can imagine the transition. That time I did not even know what depression was. But if I go back now, I think I was depressed for quite some time to have shifted
Yeah,
to that
Kolaba
place.
to Meerut is quite a distance,
Quite a distance.
metaphorically and figuratively.
But that had
Okay,
its own charm. Yeah.
what's the hobby you wish you had time for? Well, I know you do make time for things that matter to you, but one hobby that you wish you had more time for.
Mm, Swimming. I think swimming and playing guitar. I absolutely love. I also started learning, but Not that I would say I had time for. I think it's more on me to take out that time, and I might be just making excuses. So I won't be, I won't put it on the fact that if I had time for. But these are the hobbies that I would want to do more. Yeah.
Okay, Mamta, you've done so well. And the last question, while
Oh.
we're almost at the
No, no,
hour,
that's all. We've just met the deadline. You have no hamper for me for asking all those questions and me answering with so much of
no, no, no,
honesty.
coffee, definitely for you.
Coffee.
But last
Um,
question, while Kabir is called Joey, what is Mamta called at home?
Mamo.
Mamo. Okay, Mamo. Lovely, Mamo. Thank you so much. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you. Absolute
Thank you for
pleasure
this
to talk to you.
conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night. Thank you, Asai.
Thank you so much.